If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the ThrashManiac99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review for you guys, and today I am talking about one of the big releases here in May, and that is, of course, the latest offering from Cattle Decapitation with Terrasite. So yeah, the latest offering from these technical, progressive, death metal, grindcore, whatever you want to call them, just Cattle Decapitation, let's just call it at that. And of course, I've been looking forward to this one. I actually didn't listen to the singles when they dropped. I wanted to wait until the full album came out, and here we are. The full album's here. I, of course, did check out Death Atlas when it came out in 2019. Man, 2019 feels like it's been forever ago. Oh, how much the world has changed since 2019, but I digress. And, of course, with Cattle Decapitation, they hate humanity, and in some cases, you can't blame them for it. Other cases, it can be a bit iffy, but I digress. But yeah, I was a big fan of Death Atlas. Hell, that was my album of the year for 2019, and here we are about 3.5 years later, and we get Terrasite. Now, of course, yeah, this album cover, I think it's safe to say after I watched my boys over at the Thralls of Metal review this, and they showed the meme of the main character on the album cover being Hopper from A Bug's Life, now I can't get that damn visual out of my head. Oh well, tough bugs. Get that reference? Did you get that reference? I hope you did. If you did, get yourself a cookie, because you're a good boy. What the fuck am I talking about? But anyways, I digress even further. So yeah, with Terrasite, let's go through everything bit by bit, note for note. So, one of the big things I've been hearing about with this album is they might be going for a little tiny bit of accessibility on this album in terms of like bringing in more of the now what's coined as goblin clean vocals from Travis. Like, there are definitely more of those goblin vocals on this album than on Death Atlas. And of course, like, another thing I heard, people thought, maybe some of the black metal moments were disappearing. I completely disagree. I think there was still plenty of, like, blackened tremolos, and it's on a lot of songs. Like, kicking off with Terrasite Adaptation, after you get this, like, eerie intro, you get some, like, sinister dissonance that kind of reminded me of Immolation to some extent, which, of course, Immolation, the kings of dissonance when it comes to guitar work. And then it gets into this big, huge scream and blast and tremolo riff that kind of screamed black metal to me. But you do get some death metal tremolos on quite a few tracks, but whenever you get into, like, the really fast tremolo parts, they scream more black metal. And even, like, Travis's vocals occasionally get into that, like, black metal scream. But still, like, musically, I would say this is Cattle Decap maturing even more. Like, I mean, Death Atlas pretty much was, like, kind of signaling where they were going to go musically, and that's getting a little bit more, dare I say, progressive in terms of the songwriting structures. I mean, you've been kind of getting hints of it pretty much ever since, like, Harvest Floor and Monolith of Inhumanity, and even the Anthropocene Extinction. But really, when Death Atlas happened, it's like they started to get more progressive. I think that prog element is pushed even further here on Terrasite. But yeah, still retaining the Cattle Decapitation sound with the just visceral onslaught of riffs and blast beats and double bass. And, of course, Travis's vocals. Like, I will say one of the big highlights and standouts from this album, Travis's vocals overall just keep getting better. Like, his death growls are getting stronger, his low, putrid gutturals sound absolutely disgusting, the black metal screams are pretty much at its strongest, And of course, the big goblin clean vocals are probably stronger now, as like I said, you get more of those on this album than on Death Atlas. But yeah, with Terrasite Adaptation, pretty much like almost everything you love about Cattle Decap wrapped up in that track. We Eat Our Young starts off very frantic with the guitars and the blast beats, and then you get like fast riffs on top of a groove, but there's a lot of insanely fast double bass work. Even a chugging breakdown pops up on this track that made me think of Broken Hope a little bit. And then, like all throughout the album, you get like tech death levels of pure chaos all throughout the album. Scourge of the Offspring gets into this like really cool drum part at the beginning before you get some like odd time riffs and rhythms, again bringing out more of that progressive influence going on. But this song, for the most part, kind of has more of a hardcore vibe, especially with the grooves. It has a little more of a hardcore element, but there's more dissonant atmosphere coming in. Like, there's another thing that happens a lot on this album. Great usage of dissonant atmosphere, guitars, melodies, that just make everything sound even more dark, if that was somehow possible for Cattle Decap. But you still get like elements of prog and tech death with some of the time shifts and the guitar lines you get on this track. But in the chorus, with the progressions, it almost gives off almost like an heroic feeling, despite the lyrics being just all about being hateful and misanthropic. And then the Insignificance, this song has much more technicality going on. Still has some hardcore grooves, but you still get a lot of technical guitar work on this track. More dissonance even comes in. And I love the sudden mood shift into this dark, clean melody before you get this big dynamic shift with massive progressions. Then we get into The Storm Upstairs immediately with a breakdown. Now that's another thing with this album. They do perhaps do too many breakdowns on this album, but they don't get boring. I just maybe would have cut some of the breakdowns a little bit from the album and kind of focus a little more on maybe building up moods or getting more fast or more technical instead of just like a lot of breakdowns. But again, these breakdowns are never boring. They always will have something different to offer, whether it's chugging guitars or fast picking on the guitars, but on top of a breakdown groove. And I love how you get an alternating groove with The Storm Upstairs, with how you get a technical guitar line, pounding bass, sweet drum turnover into this alternating groove. But then, speaking of alternating, you get this cool alternating pattern with the guitar and the bass, while the drums keep everything together. Then we get into And the World Will Go On Without You, which might have been one of the darker, more somber tracks of the album. Like, you get right away a big badass riff before we get back to some of those black metal tremolos and classic blast beats. Cool dynamic moment before you get technical guitars and a putrid guttural vocal line from Travis. But like I said, it gets somber towards the middle of the song when the song gets a little bit slower, and these like somber atmospherics you get really just enhance the depression and the darkness of this song. And then of course we get into a Photic Doom, I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, a Photic Doom. Big fast guitar line, but an eerie melody in the background, tasty riffs throughout that just scream more death metal. The rhythm section in the middle gets really tasteful, like the bass and the kick drums are very well in sync. And of course, when it comes down to lead work, not that many guitar solos on this album, but A Photic Doom has a lead that really stands out. It's dark, yet melodic and atmospheric. Little hint of shredding at the very end, but it was a very well-crafted guitar lead to kind of bring everything to a close and into a more dark ending. Dead in Residence, again, more dissonance, a cool opening riff. Groovy while remaining very intense. More blackened moments show up, but then somehow they're able to mix blackened tremolos, blast beats, and dissonance all in one which made this part stand out so much from this song because they were able to just mash together a lot of ingredients that this album's recipe had been kind of putting together to create a rather putrid dish, so to speak. Again, great progressions, and then it gets dark again towards the end. God, I'm going to have a tough time pronouncing this title. Solastalgic? I think I got it. Solastalgic. Yes, I got it first try. Again, big blackened tremolo riff and cool drum flare at the beginning. And then we get back to more technical guitar work once again, bringing back that more tech death side of Cattle Decapitation. But the drums somehow stay in groove despite the guitars being technical, but you get like really cool tom work, like great tom accents. Dave McGraw showing why he's one of the most insane drummers in extreme music today. But again, big, massive tremolo that's somehow melodic, but it ascends and descends on top of a groove, which was a really cool part throughout the whole album. Brutal bass line, almost a tribal beat I hear towards the end, but then the mood kind of shifts over to feeling more somber, and you get a spoken word section at the end. But then we get into the big closing epic, quote-unquote, Just Another Body. The longest song. Like, the title track, Death Atlas, from Death Atlas, was up to that point the longest track, over 9 minutes. Now, we're getting over 10 minutes with Just Another Body. Dark, somber keyboards and mellotron in the beginning, and the guitars and the drums build up quite well with that atmosphere. And then you get sped up guitars that still kind of chug along to a groove. Big breakdown, more technical guitars, big blackened tremolo again. Somehow, then we get a little bit of a galloping rhythm. But the guitars stay technical, but the rhythm is kind of in like almost a, dare I say, classic heavy metal gallop, or like, it's like in between a classic metal and a speed metal gallop somehow. And then, of course, you get little atonal guitars, like not so much dissonant, but you get more atonal guitar parts on this track. And then and then there's another cool thing with this album. Whenever you get like certain cool sections in songs, they'll sometimes go back to that to be like, hey, remember this beginning? We're going to bring that back. And they do that briefly by bringing back those more somber atmospherics from the beginning and bring it back towards the end. But then at the very end, we get dissonant melodies and low, clean vocals that kind of have more of like a gothic vibe to them. And it works well together to create an atmosphere, and then a cool use of synths at the very end too. So that's all the songs. Production-wise, great production, solid mix. Though I could see some people might think this might be a little bit too bombastic, but it works, especially on the longer tracks. It really does help. And then, of course, Travis's vocals just go everywhere. What more can I say about Travis's vocals that I haven't already? Now, again, as far as some parts that I may have gripes with, maybe a little too much in the way of breakdowns, and maybe they could have trimmed those down a little bit or done different sections. But that's a very minor gripe, because again, the breakdowns never got boring, and they were always willing to change things up a little bit. So overall, I will say I don't think it's as good as Death Atlas, at least in my opinion, but it's a worthy follow-up. I give this one a 9 out of 10. Not perfect, but it's a worthy follow-up to a hell of an album in Death Atlas, and with Terrasite kind of getting more exploratory with the prog influence in terms of how they construct the songs and even like odd time shifts and more atmosphere. I could see this band getting even more unwieldy and exploratory whenever they decide to do another album, which I look forward to. But of course, that's just my opinion. What did you guys think of Terrasite by Cattle Decapitation? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, you people out there, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.